Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of In the Eyes of Truth. With us today is Father Bell, Seraphim Bell. He is an Orthodox priest living here in southern Moscow, originally from the U.S. Which state? What?
Well, born and raised in California.
Oh, California. The second center of evil in North America. Or at least southern. Well, I guess San Francisco, does that count as southern? That's central.
Central, yeah, I'd say,
Yeah.
yeah,
Northern California is really nice. I really like Northern California. It's mountains, forests.
yeah. It's beautiful. I love the state. It's not the state that I grew up in anymore. But uh,
I've heard a lot of people say that, but not just about the state, the whole country.
yeah. True
Yeah.
of the whole country, but yeah, very true of California as well.
Yeah. Well, you know what what the saying was, the way California goes, the rest of the country follows.
Mm,
Which isn't
yeah,
good.
it's not a good sign.
No, no, no.
No, if you get Gavin Newsom has done a real number on the state, and he wants to do it on the rest of the country now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, California, if I remember correctly, was one of the states that one of the first was the first state that signed in a bill with lasts about in 21, I think, or 22, that if you don't support your child's gender journey or choice starting at 5 years of age, the state will just take custody of the child.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it's happened. It's already happened. It's
mhm.
not theoretical at all. It's pretty horrific.
It's insane. So, Father, you converted to Orthodoxy. What was your path to Orthodoxy? Where did you come from? How did you get there?
Well, it was a rough path. I wasn't looking for it. Um, I s Thinking about C.S. Lewis described his conversion to Christianity as kicking and screaming. He came kicking and screaming into the kingdom. I came kicking and screaming kind of into the Orthodox Church. Um, I was at the time in living in Silicon Valley,
Hmm.
had a Protestant church. Everything seemed to be going really well. Um, but I was losing a sense of direction for the parish and wasn't sure about our future, how to direct it, and so I suggested to all the people that we'll spend the next 40 days in prayer and fasting, asking God to enlighten us about the future of our parish, the direction of the parish. And on the first night that we met together in the church, someone came in and asked, "Is this where Frank Schaeffer's speaking?" I said, "No, it's probably down the street at such and such a building." And so after the meeting, or the next night, I should say, I found out that after our meeting, a number of our parishioners went down to Frank's meeting, and they came back and they said, "Hey, did you know that Schaeffer converted to Orthodoxy?" And I don't know if you know who Frank Schaeffer
No, no.
is, but his father was a very famous Protestant, conservative
Hmm.
Protestant uh, theologian, and Frank made quite a name for himself for good and bad reasons. And he was very well known. He was kind of one of the chosen sons for the evangelical Christian movement, and then he betrayed them all by converting to Orthodoxy. And
The black sheep.
right, yeah. Yeah, he was always kind of a black sheep, no matter where he was, really. So, and I just blew it off and I said, well, it's Frank. You never know what he's going to do next. And but there's nothing there for us in it. And then the next day, I went to a meeting of fellow pastors, and I found out that a couple of my friends, my closest friends, were themselves investigating Orthodoxy, and that really ticked me off. I don't know why I was so mad. I really got steamed about it, and I decided, okay, I've got to investigate this, get my ducks in order, and tell them why it's wrong. I'd already decided it was wrong. And I could tell my parishioners, "Oh, there's nothing there, just ignore it, forget it." And most of them would just do as I suggested. But I couldn't do that with my peers. They'd just laugh and say, "We can think for ourselves, thanks." So I jumped into a real intensive time of reading every day. I was reading every other day. I was meeting with some Orthodox priests or lay people and talking to them, grilling them, arguing with them. And the way I go about trying to make a decision or reach what I think is the truth is uh, I have this attitude. I'm going to bring my best arguments, and I expect you to bring your best arguments. I want to hear the best you've got, and we'll go at it, and we'll see what's standing when we finish. And time again, I would leave those meetings and go, "Gee, I think they're right. I think they're right. I think I'm wrong on this." When I go back and I would read sometimes on some of the issues, I'd read some of the Protestant theologians. I remember one time saying, "Ah, that can't be right," and I went back and got into my books and read what Calvin had to say, and I thought, son of a gun, he agrees with him. I didn't even know that. And I was something of an expert on Calvin. I didn't even know he believed the same thing that the Orthodox believed on that. That kind of blew me away, really disappointed me. I think, Calvin, you let me down on that one. Um, this was a real internal struggle. It wasn't just intellectual. I felt in an internal way, in a spiritual way, my heart was pulled to a lot of what I was finding out about in Orthodoxy. But my mind was just revolting against it. No, no, no. My heart was saying, maybe, maybe. And my head was saying, no, no, no. To the point where I really became physically ill. I was bedridden for a few weeks.
Wow.
I'd climb out of bed on Sunday morning and go do the service and then get back in bed. I was just sick, not too sick to read and still make phone calls and discuss and that kind of stuff. And anyway, I finally came to the point after months of this of believing that Orthodoxy is the historical church. This really is the historical church. And I called one of the priests and I said, okay, I can see that the Orthodox Church is the historical church. It really is the church that was started by the apostles. I'm not in it, and I'm really not happy about this. And he thought I meant I'm not happy that I'm not in the Orthodox Church. And I meant I'm not happy to find out it's the real church. I don't want it to be the real church. I don't want anything to do with this. My life's going along just fine. I got a great parish. I love it. Everything's happy. This is going to blow everything up. And it did. I don't know what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to the parish. This is a mess. Anyway, so but the decision was, well, I have to become a part of the Orthodox Church because I believe it's the truth. And what kind of person am I if I believe I found the truth and then I throw it under the carpet and just pretend that it never happened and I try to go on with life as usual? It's not going to work. It's not going to work for me. And if I have any integrity, then I've got to follow it whether I like it or not. And as I say, I didn't like it initially. I mean, now, thank God, I'm grateful to the Lord. Um, so anyway, that's kind of how I got dragged into the Orthodox Church.
How
That
did
was,
uh how did your family, how did your parish take it? Because that has to be. I've known a lot of Protestants, and I was actually baptized Lutheran, and then I converted to Orthodox, even though my family roots are Orthodox from
Mhm.
Russia. But I know a lot of Protestants, and you talk to them, and it's like you're pagans as far as they're
Yeah.
concerned. So
Well, I had to find a way. The question I had, even for the Orthodox priests, I said, look, now that I believe this, how do I bring my parish in? And they said, we don't know. We're just going to watch you and see what happens. I said, oh, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
guinea
I'm
pig.
the, yeah, I'm the guinea pig. I'm the experiment. Let's see how this goes. Let's see if he survives to tell the story. So, you know, I that was very difficult. I called a leader. I called a meeting of the leaders, a retreat. I decided we'll have a retreat, and I don't remember now. It's over 30 years ago. Maybe there were a dozen of the key leaders, and then there were sub leaders from that as well. So maybe about a group of 75 of us
Oh wow,
met for a weekend retreat.
it's a
I didn't
big
even know what to
parish.
do initially. I mean, let's have a retreat, but I didn't even know what am I going to say to them when I get there. I mean, 5 minutes before the meeting, I was still trying to decide finally, well, how am I going to address this? I didn't know how to get into it. So finally, I just decided to share my journey. I said, look, this is what's been going on with me. We've been praying and fasting for direction. This thing, Orthodoxy, got plopped in my lap the first night, the first day we met. It was an annoying inconvenience for me as we started. And then I recognized it as the hand of God. This is direction for me. I believe for you as well, but you have to decide. So let me tell you the steps. This is what happened. And then I presented to them an historical timeline of the church. You know, how do we get 30, 40,000, 50,000 different denominations that we've got? How did that happen? The Lord didn't say I've come to establish my branches. I came to establish a church, the church,
Right.
the church. So where is that church and what happened with that? So anyway, I went through all of that, and to my shock, uh, everybody there except one guy said, "We're on board with this. This makes
Wow.
sense to us. This makes sense to us." Of course, none of
Wow.
us knew what we were actually getting into. Again, it was an intellectual thing at that point.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't really know what the Orthodox Church was to any great degree, but I was very surprised by that. I was amazed, but encouraged. So then I sent out. I timed this so we are in the retreat Friday and then Saturday and then Sunday we're going to have the service. So Saturday night I sent out uh, an email to everybody, message to everybody that I'll be talking about the results of the weekend leadership retreat that we had. Tell everyone, you know. So I kind of did the same thing with the whole parish.
How big was the parish?
We were over 300 people were
Hmm.
there at that time.
Oh, it's a good sized parish.
Came to the service the next Sunday. It was half empty. Half the people were gone. And a lot of these people I was really close with. I mean, really close. And I would have expected at least for them to get in touch and say, look, we don't like this. This isn't for us. But 99% of them just scattered to the wind, just disappeared, you
Hmm.
know. So I remember saying, "Hey guys, come here, help me. Let's offload a bunch of these chairs and get them out so it doesn't look like such an empty hall." You know. So,
Yeah.
so we scrambled with that. But so we lost probably over half. In the end, about 120 people, very biblical number, about 120 people uh, joined the Orthodox Church at the end. We went through a catechism, a period of catechism, and then about 120 of us joined the church. In the next year and a half, we were back up to over 300 people. People, people were just flocking to the church to find out why, what happened. And people's family members would say, "Well, what on earth have you done? Why?" And they would just say, "Well, why don't you come to the service and see? Why don't you come and see?" And that was a whole form of evangelism, really. We were just saying, "Well, just come and see, just taste and see." And so dozens and dozens, and like I say, in a year and a half, we were over 300 again. Uh, so it was an amazing time for us, amazing period. A lot of wounds, a lot of broken relationships, but a lot of new relationships as well. And as for my family, initially it was really, really one of the most difficult times for my wife and me. I mean, initially, understandably, her attitude was, "Are you crazy? Everything's going fine. What's the matter with you? Why would you want to rock the boat? This does not, it doesn't make any sense, you know."
It's more like
And
flipping the boat in this case.
yeah, 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 shooting my own hole into it. Um, so you know, it got to the point where we'd have to tiptoe around the subject. We couldn't talk about it. And I would say most of that was my fault because I was impatient for her to be where I was. And it doesn't work that way.
No,
You know,
no, it doesn't.
everybody has their own pace. And and I wanted her to be where I was, and she wasn't where I was. For a long time, she wasn't where I was. Now I'm trying to catch up to her, but anyway.
You
Um,
know, one of my good friends, who's a deacon in the Orthodox church I went to in Raleigh, North Carolina, his
mm,
wife was Catholic. Uh, she wouldn't convert, but she was the secretary for a priest. And then
interesting.
one day, just out of the blue during the service, priest said, "We're going to have a chrismation." And Wanda stands up and goes to the altar. It's like, whoa. I mean, her husband didn't know about it. Gary was like, it was
Wow.
a shock. Yeah, she'd been quietly, she'd been doing her thing, and
Yeah.
she wouldn't go to the Catholic church, even though she was Catholic. She'd go to Orthodox services, but she refused to convert for probably a good 10 years.
Yeah.
And just out of the blue one day, apparently she'd been working on it for a while, and
Well,
surprise.
she was paying attention. Good for her.
Yeah. My own, my own path I was when we came from the Soviet Union. I mean, my parents were atheists, and me and my mother became Lutheran. My mother was getting pulled to the Catholic Church. I had friends in the Lutheran Church, and the Boy Scouts were in the Lutheran Church. So
There
we
you go.
wound up in the Lutheran Church.
Yeah.
And for a while, my mom was pretty religious, but then the church got big, and they didn't really care about the people. They just cared about the 10%, the tithe. So,
Mhm.
and she got really disappointed, and then we stopped going. And I guess when that was about 13, and I guess about 17 or 18, I started having a pull. And I went back to the Lutheran church, but I couldn't accept it. Just something in me just said, no, this isn't gonna fly. I had a lot of friends who were Catholic, so I went to the Catholic church. Like, yeah, this is closer, but I just can't accept the Pope. I mean, just kill me, but I can't accept the Pope. I didn't know anything about Orthodoxy. And then when I got
It's
to
ironic.
university, and my parents just never talked about it, even though we had a huge Greek Orthodox cathedral in the middle of Charlotte, where we were
Mm.
living. And then when I got to NC State, I took Russian literature courses, and you start reading, and there's the Orthodox churches and everything. You can't get away from Dostoevsky and the church and everything else. Uh, and I just started researching, and it just felt that that's the place, that's the pull. And I called well, who became my priest. I said, Father Paul, I was like, you know, I'm uh, I'm interested in converting. It's like, have you ever been to an Orthodox church? No, but I want to convert. Maybe you should come. Like, yeah, yeah, of course. But yeah, the first time I went in, it just felt like I was home.
Mm.
That was the Holy Spirit just pulled me in. So,
I remember we taking a fellow who ended up becoming our choir director, a wonderful musician, to an Orthodox service, his first time. And at some point, I turned and greeted him with the traditional greeting as Christ is in our midst. Something the clergy say to each other just before communion, but also lay people would say it to each other in some circumstances. Well, Christ is in our midst. And he looked and he was just kind of wide-eyed and he goes, no joke.
wow, that's
I said, well, actually, I said the traditional response is he is and ever shall be, but that'll do.
um, have you ever just as a question, because some have, I guess some may not talk about. Have you ever seen anything when doing the service on the altar, like um, well, anything from angels to the Lord's light, anything? Because I've heard different things from different people, and I've seen photos. This one woman showed me a photo where they were doing a baptism. It's a Russian church here outside of Moscow. They were doing a baptism, and there's a light that's shining down on the mother and the child, which is like, look at the picture. The window's here, but the light's coming from here, from the icon. And you could just see, I mean, you could clearly see there was a light beaming down, faint, but it was there. And the window's off to the side, and there's no, I mean, it's I guess cloudy outside because there's no light coming through the window. It's just there you
Yeah,
go.
I personally haven't. I
Mhm.
remember meeting an older priest. I was young priest. He was an old priest in the Greek Archdiocese. Met him in Arizona, um, where he was serving, and everybody knew him because, and he told me about the experience. He was serving at the altar, and as he prepared to read the gospel, suddenly he saw something that looked like it was right in the center of the gospel cover was an enamel icon of Christ. the gospel covers are always very decorative or
Hmm.
ornamented, and it looked like something was bubbling up on it, and he looked close, and it was red, and he touched it, and it was blood. And of course, everyone in the altar was shocked. He was shocked. Very reverently took the gospel to another table. They have the table of preparation where we prepare
Hmm.
the bread and the wine for the service and placed it there, and then got another gospel. You usually have several of them, often smaller for daily use. And at the end of the service, went back and found that it was still there, it was still moist. They called the bishop to come. Uh, he came and examined everything, and they made a special, they kept it there on the altar preparation. They made a special container for it. It eventually dried, but remained there. The blood
Hmm.
remained on the icon, the blood of Christ. I don't understand such miracles. We usually don't understand such
No.
miracles, um, uh, but they occur. Um, I have a friend, now he's a bishop actually, um, and he's a bishop in San Francisco, and he serves in the church in which St. John of San Francisco, St. John of Shanghai and San
Hmm.
Francisco served uh, back in the 60s. In fact, we just had his one of his feast days this past Sunday. Uh, and it's well known there that there was an occasion when uh, St. John was serving the liturgy, and one of the altar attendants was outside the altar. There's a little hallway on the side with a door that's open to, you can see into the altar itself. And he was walking by and glanced during the liturgy, going to get something. And he saw St. John in front of the article, and he was elevated. He was, I don't know, maybe a foot off the ground, just elevated while he was serving there and surrounded in light. These kinds of things happen, and there are countless
Hmm.
stories and people who are alive now who've seen such miracles. Um, but I've not seen any light like that in the altar. Um, you know, the thing is, they're constantly going on, but for most of us, our senses are deadened to them, and
Yeah.
we don't have eyes to see. To use a biblical term, we don't have eyes to see the miracles that are taking place around us.
One of my friend's wives, she when she was a child, her brother was got really, really sick and was dying, little brother. And she was telling me this, and they rushed him to the hospital. His mother ran in there with him to the emergency room. And some old doctor came out there, said, took the child, we'll take care of him. I don't remember what name he used. Um, Anyways, cut to the scene. A couple hours later, he was fine.
Mm.
And she came back to thank the doctor, and she's describing the doctor like, we don't have any doctors like that. And I don't remember which of the saints it was, but the name matched the saint, kind of matched the description. And this was actually in California, of all places, Los Angeles back many moons ago when it was a little calmer and more
Yeah.
sane. But yeah, it's just like that, and they just didn't have that kind of that doctor, anybody by that description. But they had a
I have a
saint.
I have a friend who is a priest in California, um, Father Nikolai. And when I was living in Greece, he came over to visit me, and we went out to Mount Athos together. And I hadn't seen him for a little while, and I noticed he had a slight limp. And after a couple of days, I said, I noticed you're walking with a little limp. What happened? He goes, you don't know the story. I said, no. I said, wait, I've been in touch for a while. Tell me. So he had real bad pain in his neck. Went to the doctor for an examination. He was examined, and the doctor said, I don't know how you're here. I don't know how you're sitting here talking to me. You've got a fractured neck, and you're going to need surgery. And he said, well, okay, you know, let's make an appointment for another examination or something. I've got services. And he said, no, no, you don't understand. A slight bump and you're dead.
Wow.
It's that serious. So you're not leaving this hospital and you're going to have an immediate operation. And he said, well, come on, how can it be that serious? I'm walking around, it's just a pain. And he said, it is that serious. And you might not survive this operation. And if you do survive, your chances of ever walking again are 50-50 at best, and you're not going to serve as a priest anymore. Those days are over. Do you understand how serious this is? We're talking life and death. So that was pretty depressing news for him. He stayed in the hospital. He said that night he woke up and there was this little priest standing at the foot of the bed and looked at him and said, "Don't be afraid. Don't worry. You're going to live." And then he was gone. And Father Nikolai said, I didn't know. Was that a dream? I was sleepy. I woke up. This priest is standing at the end of my bed. What priest is in the hospital at that time? There's no chaplain there at that time. I'm thinking maybe it was just a dream. I don't know. So they have the operation. He comes out of the anesthesia, and the surgeon comes and visits him and says, well, obviously you lived, you survived, but we don't know if you're going to walk yet. It's going to be a while before we're going to find out whether you walk. And again, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be able to take up your duties again as a priest. Those days are over for you. So he said that night he was just kind of in shock, uh, struggling with despair, and what am I going to do? And depressed about losing the priesthood. And he said, once again, this little priest walks into his room and says, "Don't worry, don't be afraid. You're going to walk and you're going to serve as a priest again." And then he left. And this time, Father Nikolai recognized him from the icons, and it was St. John of San Francisco. It was St. John.
Wow.
And he said, so in his opinion, he said, I have this little limp to remind me that it actually did happen. It wasn't just a dream and it wasn't a figment of my imagination. It really happened. He really came to me and he really blessed me. And because of him, I walk and I serve as a priest. Such things still happen, thank God.
Yeah, thank God. A lot of these, I think a lot of this is happening, especially with the war going on, because
Mm,
a lot of people are been converting. They've been seeing things. In fact,
yeah.
there was a Chinese volunteer soldier who just converted to Orthodoxy. There was a story about him. So yeah, that it happens. It happens a lot. Thank God it
Yeah, I
happens a
think
lot.
when this whole thing is over, we may have a series of books about these kinds of things that have taken place on the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, in my own life, I can't say I've seen as much on the holy side, but I've seen some demonic stuff. And it's and you know what you see, and you got to stop and go, I just experienced that, and it's
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, it works in the other direction, gets you back to
That's
faith
right.
a lot. Yeah.
Well, the
So
spiritual world is real, light and
yeah.
dark.
So how did you get from California? So you converted to Orthodoxy, your parish converted, well, half the parish converted to Russia. That's because you don't have Russian roots as far as I
No,
know.
no, no. Scottish, Irish, Cherokee.
Mhm. That's a
Uh,
pretty no. There's been plenty of Scots that actually served in the Russian Empire
that's
and
right.
such,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's still a pretty big jump from California to Moscow.
Well, it was in '93, and I'd done a lot of traveling, and I had a lot of mileage, and I was going to lose it. Come December, this was like in June or so. Come December, I was going to lose all the mileage, either use it or lose it.
Yeah, yeah, I remember those.
And so I thought, well, I'm going to go visit some Orthodox places.
Hmm.
So I made plans to go to Romania. I'd been to Romania quite a few times, but always as a Protestant. So I decided to go this time as an Orthodox priest and uh, decided that I would go to Russia. I wanted to buy some things for the church. Back then, it was not so easy to find things, Orthodox things in America for your parish.
Hmm.
I thought surely they're going to have a lot in Russia, so I'll go to Russia. And so I made arrangements. Uh, and there were a couple of lay people, a couple of guys who were going to go with me. So I went to
Right.
Romania,
Mhm.
and while I was there, it was one night I was speaking to a group of seminarians, and after the meeting was over, they rushed up to me and said, "Are you still going to go to Russia? Are you going to go to Russia? Have you heard what's happened?" I said, I don't know anything. What's happened?" Yeltsin just had the army fire on the White House. There's a revolution taking place. There will be civil war and all this. You're going to go. So I called the
Thank
two
God there
guys
was
up.
no Civil War.
Yeah, I called them up and I said, I just found out what's happening, or that there's something. I don't know what's happening, but there's something happening there. And they said, "Yeah, you still want to go?" I said, "Yeah, I want to go." I mean, to me, very naive, young, adventuresome. Hey, this is a great adventure. Let's go. This is history. Let's go. Uh,
93, that's an adventure back then. Russia wasn't its
so
best
Oh
phase.
no, it was wild times.
Yeah.
So we landed, I don't know, a couple of days after that event, and we went from the airport to the bridge to look across at it. And I remember there were soldiers there. There was a tank there. I asked the soldier, you know, "Why are you here? What's the deal?" And he said, "Oh, they're still armed." I don't know what he called them, rebels or whatever. And that it's interesting. That was the take that I had for so many years, that they had that the people in the White House had tried to overthrow the government, and Yeltsin had saved the day, when in fact it was Yeltsin who
Yeah.
was the guilty one on that one, and discarded the Constitution and fired. And I mean, it was a violent insurrection, frankly.
But
Uh,
the
and-
Democrats sent their best PR team right over there. Clinton sent them over there
yeah,
to pump them back up. Get,
yeah, yeah. So in
yeah.
America, we thought he was
Carvel.
the hero. He was the
Yeah.
hero. Yeltsin was the hero, but. Anyway, so that was my first taste, and I think I just spent a couple of weeks. It was an amazing trip. Uh, saw a lot of good things and really sad and terrible things. It was uh, this one person said to me while we were there, "This is like Chicago during the Al Capone days." People, business
Yeah.
people would step outside a hotel in the morning and get shot down in the street, and oh, there were people, a lot of sadness, a lot of people just desperate to find a way to put food on the table for their
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
A lot of sadness. It was a heartache. Um, but I loved visiting the churches, the monasteries. And back then in the 90s, so many of them were just under renovation. They were still,
Hmm.
they looked in terrible shape, but the people were carrying bricks to rebuild everything. It was an amazing situation. Um, and so I came back the next year. See, that was 93. I went over there. I came back in 94. I came back in 95. Made a few other trips in the 90s. In the early 2000s, I came back, and I was just drawn to it. And not surprising if you're Orthodox and you come here. In the States, if your town has a church on every corner, it's a Protestant
Yeah.
church and maybe a Catholic church. But here, church on every corner, and it's Orthodox. So it's like Orthodox wonderland for a new convert. So my eyes were big. I loved it.
That's an
And
interesting way to put
also,
it.
I loved I love history. I was really interested in Russian history. It was just beginning. One of my roommates at university was a Russian studies major, and then I got to know a couple of the Russian professors there. They were from Russia as well, and so I was really intrigued even before I became Orthodox, and this just incited that interest, and I just kept wanting to come back, wanting to come back. Uh, in 2015, I came over and spent most of the year. I lived in Sergei Posad at the Lavra,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
um, then the Synod of Bishops. I'm a priest in the Russian church outside Russia, and the
Hmm.
Synod of Bishops
Broker.
appointed me as the chair of the missionary department. And our metropolitan at one point asked me to go to the Philippines to do some mission work, and then to Nepal. I lived a couple of years in Nepal, uh, which was wonderful, but I became ill because of the pollution. Kathmandu is really polluted, and
Hmm.
got
Oh, really?
asthma and couldn't get the
Hmm.
medications, and I had to leave. I had to get out. And then I was asked to go to India. When I recovered, I went to India, and within 3 days, I was having difficulty. That was the most polluted place I'd ever been in my life.
I've been to India once for 2 weeks on business, and yeah, it's just horrible. It's the
Yeah,
level
a
of
big
pollution is
country, and
insane.
I'm sure there's some wonderful places. I was not in one of those
Yeah,
wonderful places.
yeah.
I
Neither
was
was
in,
I.
it's in
Uh,
the most polluted area I've ever seen in my life. I couldn't believe that people lived in such conditions, but they did. But for me, it made me ill, and I had to leave um, and return to the States. After I recovered, the bishop called and said, Metropolitan called and said, "Have you recovered? How are you doing?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, I've recovered. I'm okay." He goes, "Okay, can you go back?" I said, "Sure, I can go back. Will you do my funeral service? Because if I go back, I'm
Gosh.
going to be dead. If I go back over there, it's going to kill
Uh,
me." He said, "Okay, okay." And then he said, "Well, let me know what you want to do, where you want to go." And I didn't know. And during that time, it was like 2019, uh, a former parishioner of mine, she's Russian. She moved back to Russia to take care of her mother. She asked me what she was visiting. She says, "So, Father Seraphim, what are you going to do?" I said, I don't know. I'm praying, I'm thinking, I don't know." And she said, "Well, look, I know your interest in Russia. We have a family apartment in south of Moscow. If you want to go over and stay there, you want to study Russian, what do you want to do? You can stay at the apartment." And I said, "Well, that's really kind of you. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you." So a couple of months later, nothing else was opening up for me. And so I said, "Okay, I'll go." And so I came over in January 2020, and I've been here since then.
Father, we're gonna run out of time in a minute. If you have some more time, I'll send you another invite, and
Yeah, sure.
we'll continue. It'll cut
Okay.
off in probably about. Well, actually, I'll go ahead and close it out because it's almost done anyways, and then I'll send you
Okay.
another invite. So we'll
All right.
we'll, we'll be back for everyone. You won't experience it, but So, so you came here I mean, to move here in 2020, with your whole family, or how did father? Okay,
You got it?
yeah, now it goes. Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
I came over here initially to attend the Pushkin Institute, Russian language, and my family would say, "How long are you going to be there?" I said, I don't know. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Who knows?" I had come a couple of times, and uh, in fact, the previous time in 2015, I almost died. Had blood clots in both lungs,
Oh, geez.
and I said, I always say, "I love Russia. I don't know if Russia loves me." I've had some close calls there. So I said, who knows what's going to happen? I could get over there and 2 weeks later I get sick and I got to come back. Let's see what happens. In the back of my mind, I was thinking I'd really like this to be long term, but I don't want to say that to them yet. I don't know how they're going to handle that.
Hmm.
Um, and so so I came over and I started at the Pushkin Institute, and then the whole scandemic, the whole COVID thing, hit, and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that that ruined the whole program there, ruined their institute to some degree for the next few years. Um, and so I was here a year and a half before my wife was able to come over, and she came over and fell in love with it. Uh, she's back in the States right now, visiting our family and visiting her family. We have two older children and 10 grandchildren in the
Oh,
States.
wow.
So kind of
Congratulations.
hard kind of hard to miss them. And then our youngest son is here, married to a young woman from Leningrad, and they just had their first child. So we have our granddaughter here as
Congratulations.
well, and that's wonderful. So she'll be back the first week in December. Um,
So how did your family say? Okay, so you've gone from a Protestant parish to m massively turning the boat over into Orthodoxy, and then down the road you go, and we're going to leave for Russia." That must have been just the tipping point for, or were they used to this? And they're kind of,
well, yeah, they're used to it. My two older children were born in Scotland.
oh,
Um,
okay. Oh, nice
I
place. Well, it used to be a nice place.
used to be. I always thought we would end our days there. I love Scotland. I went over there, did my doctorate. I served as a minister in the Church of Scotland. Um, we loved it, and we still have really good friends there. We went back every summer for a dozen years or so, and like I say, the two oldest were born there. Uh, and then we lived in Greece for a time. They loved that. We loved it. So they're used to that. They really didn't have any
Mm.
problem. And from an Orthodox standpoint, they were kind of excited about us being here. And then when my youngest son was married a couple of years ago, the two older children came over for the wedding, and one of my grandsons came as well. And my older son's wife came along as well. They almost shut that trip down. My older son Matthew got in touch with me and said, "Dad, I'm getting a lot of pressure not to come. People are saying it's too dangerous over there, you know." And now he says Marie is afraid to come. You know, they've made her afraid. You know how they worry. And I said, "Matthew, you think I would have your mom living here in a war zone? You know, if it was a war zone, if it was, it's." I said, "We feel safer here than we do there.
Yeah.
There's no problem." So Marie, my daughter-in-law, actually went, they lived near a monastery, and she actually went to talk to the abbess about it, whom I know very well. I used to serve there, in fact, many years ago. And she said, "Marie, if Father Seraphim says it's safe, go." You know, so I was grateful for that. So they came over and they fell in love with it as well. I mean, it was wonderful.
Yeah, the
Uh,
saying, don't try to measure Russia by with a yardstick. Don't try to understand it with your mind. Just love it
yeah,
with your heart.
yeah.
That's
You,
just
you
how it
just you
is.
just gotta experience it.
Yeah. There's a lot of
You know,
people there, I've talked to a lot of people I've known for years. I spent half my life in the US in the South. And they still look at it like, oh, aren't there communists running? I was like, geez. News travels slow, I understand, but for God's
yeah.
sakes. But
Yeah,
yeah.
that is one of my most frustrating experiences is that we do have family and friends who think that this is a terribly dangerous country, still communist. I even have one relative who said, "Putin, he's a Nazi, right?" You know, and I thought, "Oh, please, please do a little reading,
Uh,
study, please." I don't know how you get over that. Well, it's very difficult to get over because that's the propaganda that comes from the
oh yeah.
establishment to the people. You know, if they live on a diet of the mainstream media, then that's what they're going to get.
Yeah, it's
So
made for
that's
the
one of
low
my biggest,
information voter.
yeah, it's one of my biggest frustrations about it. But our being there has changed the minds of some people because they know us, they know we're not crazy, and
It's
you
good.
know that we wouldn't be living in a dangerous situation. And you know, they hear Marilyn. Well, she'll say she lives here like she would never live back in the States. Here we are in one of the biggest cities in the world, and she'll go down to the center at night and come back late at night on the metro and walk home in the dark. Never a moment of fear or worry that she's going to get mugged or raped or murdered. You know, it doesn't enter our mind here. It's just so incredibly safe, and there's a lot to love about it. And she does. She's really happy here, and I am too, for that matter. So
I can't say the same thing for most of Western Central Europe. I've traveled a lot. I haven't a lot since conflict started, obviously, and I really can't anymore. But that's different reasons. But
yeah.
just yeah, Western Europe, Central Western Europe is just it's a hellhole. And Father, I was in 2015. I was in Aberdeen for some training for this company I was working with, and it was winter time, and the training sessions got done, and everybody's like, "Hey, let's go have a beer." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, let's go have a beer." and it's an Anglican, but it was an old Anglican church that's been converted to a bar.
Hmm.
I'm like, well, the altar, there's a DJ in the middle of it. It's just is the bar
Wow.
itself. I took the beer, went outside, and they're like,
Wow.
Stas, why aren't you coming back in? It's like, I can't. Like, why? Because it's a church. I can't
Yeah.
sit there and drink in a church. It's just, but that's not a church anymore. Like, well, no, for us, that's still a church. Even if it's a
Yeah.
Protestant church on the road, it's still a
Yeah. It's
church.
very sad.
And
That's
they
that's
couldn't
the city
understand
I
me.
that's the city where I went to university and
Hmm.
lived there. And that's the city where my two older children were born as well. And we
Nice
moved to
city, very
Edinburgh
nice
after
city.
that. But sad to see that happening. I saw churches there that have been turned into warehouses and auctioneer places. Um, I remember when I was in Edinburgh, I was an assistant at a really large inner city church there, and I was sent out to visit some of the parishioners, and I was visiting with this elderly lady in an old tenement building and asking about her life, and she found out she had been born in that same area. And I said, "Wow, you've seen a lot of changes then." I'm thinking architectural changes
Hmm.
and that kind of stuff. She goes, "Ah, the Packies are taking over." you know. And my American sensitivity thought, wow, what a racist statement. That's such a race. I'm embarrassed. That's a racist statement. Well, she wasn't making a racist
No,
statement.
no.
She was simply observing what was happening, and it's true. And then I took my two older grandchildren to the UK 2 years ago. I wanted them to see where their parents were born and where they spent their first years. And we drove up to Edinburgh, had a hard time finding a place to park, got out, and I started walking towards the center where I wanted to go. And I turned the corner, and there was this huge new mosque. And I can't tell you how incongruous that was to me in my experience of Edinburgh. A brand new, huge mosque there. I was stunned. I went a couple of blocks more, and this Chinese guy in his, maybe he was Japanese, I don't know, in his Buddhist robes comes up to me and hands me a tract to evangelize me. And I just looked, I thought, where have I landed? What happened to Edinburgh? What did you do with the city? You know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I walking around the city, I kept running into that guy at one point, and he wouldn't remember it was me. And that you tried to hand me your tract several times already, guy. And he came up to me and he's doing it again. And across from me was a guy that was playing the bagpipes. That that was standard on the Royal Mile. I'd seen that 100 times when I lived there. The cops came and said, "You can't play the pipes here." And they took him away. He argued with them a little bit and they arrested him and took him away. And I thought, this is just upside down. I feel like I'm in
Yeah.
the Twilight Zone.
Well,
This is Scotland.
they've got videos coming out of street preachers being arrested, but you can have stands, converting to Islam, 5 days, 5 times a day calls to prayer. That's fine. But the Christian side is absolutely being repressed. I mean,
Yeah.
that's beyond any doubt. The population is being replaced, and the
Yeah,
Christian
it's a
church is being
different country.
destroyed. And
Yeah.
I've seen that in Europe and other parts of Europe. It's horrible. It's horrible to watch. So,
Yeah, a
to-
lot of countries have been ruined with their immigration
yeah,
policies. And I get a little concerned for Russia with a lot of immigrant. I'm an immigrant, but I get a little concerned for Russia as well. I mean, there are a lot of, as you know, there are a lot of illegal aliens here, but they're
yeah.
quick to do something about it. Unlike what our Biden administration did for 4 years, allowing them in, Russia is quick to act. And when there are acts, if there are any acts of violence from them, boy, they really crack down on that, and they send them out immediately, arrest them, either send them to jail, depending on what they've done, or send them out of the country.
One of the reasons they do that, though, is because they know the population won't stand for it for very long. And unless you want the population taking care of business, which would be
Yeah,
much worse, street justice, and they will get street justice.
yeah,
The government knows, it's not like the Europeans. The things that the Europeans tolerate is just, it's mind-boggling. I mean, you had 1,000 rapes in Cologne after Merkel let in that just giant wave of military-age men. There were
yeah,
hardly any women and children. Yeah, 1,000 rapes. That would have been blood in the streets. I mean, there were a river of blood if this was Russia, because nobody would have
I,
tolerated that. But
I
it's
read
just
yesterday,
incredible.
a couple of days ago, I can't remember now if it was Denmark or Sweden, was the rape capital of
Oh,
Europe
Sweden,
now.
Sweden, Stockholm.
I mean, yeah, it's really
But I
terrible.
think London's now the rape capital. I think it's Stockholm's now in second place, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you've got those grooming gangs in London and
Yeah,
other parts of England.
Rotterdam and yeah, elsewhere. Yeah. Yeah, it's really bad news. And I'm glad we don't have that here. I'm very grateful for the life that we've got here. I remember the first year that when I moved over here in 2020 and I was walking down the street, walking towards the church or from the church, I'm not sure which, where I served just down the street. And with my peripheral vision, I can see a guy approaching me. Um, this happened a couple of times early on. And I walk down the street. I'm not like this usually. I'm thinking about stuff and I'm kind of looking down, but I can see this guy approaching me, and just instinctively, as an American in an American big city, I kind of tense up and get ready. What's coming my way?
Hmm.
And then it becomes real clear he's actually coming right to me, and I go, okay, here we go. And I look up, and he's got his hands like this, Father bless, you know. So I give him a blessing. I go, wow. And one other time something like that happened. A guy's on a bicycle and he's coming towards me, and he sees me and I see him, and I just kind of look down and he jumps off the bike and tosses it down the ground. I thought, oh wow, this is an aggressive one, and I kind of tense up like this. Same thing. He comes up, Father bless. And I just that never happens in America.
Yeah, yeah. It's a whole different atmosphere, and
Yeah.
and I think the population, including with the conflict, it's becoming more religious, which is good.
Yeah.
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 So, Father, I'm about out of time because I've got another commitment. It was
Right.
great talking to you. I hope this is not the last time we talk.
Well, thanks for
Uh,
the invitation, and it's good to be acquainted with you, Stan.
Same, same. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for joining. If you have any questions for Father Bell, write them in the comments. I'll make sure he has the link so you can check. And hey, Russia's safe. Come visit. Fall in love.
There you
Immigrate.
go. There you go.
Have many children.
Yeah.
Many, many children. So, thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Cheers.